Are we live?
I'm seeing we're live.
Okay.
I was like, is he going to say something?
No, I got an error message here that we are like not live, but then it seemed like we're live. Okay, so hello everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of Rocket Lab Weekly. We are at episode 47, coming up on the 1 year mark very soon. We have today with us Dave G and Matt Farley. Thank you guys for being here.
Thanks for having us, as always. Always a good time.
Yeah, and guys, it seems like last week I was sick and I might have infected Dave because he spent too much time with me.
I guess, yeah, you managed it somehow. Impressive. I don't know.
we didn't have the 6 feet difference, like our faces were too close.
They're very close together on the screen here. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So how have your guys' week been?
Very good. Yeah, very good. I'm back at all-time highs for the portfolio. I actually sold out of some things as well, so now I have a little bit of cash. I'm trying to spread that around. Trying to figure out, there's some small things of debt, like with houses and stuff like that I'm trying to see if I'm going to pay a little bit of that off.
Small things. Really, I have 100,000 mortgage or 200,000.
But yeah,
pennies here and there.
Just some small things, yeah. But other than that, the market's been treating me really well. Kind of curious to see if we persist, if the news of the impending rate cuts is going to lead us into some sort of, I want to say channel downwards, but I have a feeling that everyone's going to be very happy initially about these rate cuts coming in, but eventually they're going to start to realize, oh man, unemployment's actually creeping up, all these delinquencies are creeping up, all these other things that have been lagging are starting to actually show up, and that's the reason why there's rate cuts. It's not that things are all right, rosy and beautiful out there in the world, right? So hopefully it doesn't get too bad, but we will see.
Yeah. yeah.
All right, and you, Dave, how was your week?
Pretty good. Obviously, I'm happy to see Rocket Lab around $7. I was just looking the other day, and I was like, oh yeah, I think my shares in Rocket Lab are now worth over 100,000. So that feels pretty good. I know it's probably pennies to you, but yeah, in terms of individual stocks, that's my second largest now, behind only Tesla. And Tesla, I didn't put as much in as Rocket Lab. It just happened to go way up before I bought it. So it's climbing, and yeah, it's fun time.
Yeah, I saw your wrongly uploaded video.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I've done that twice now.
Was that your OnlyFans? So did you put the OnlyFans
No,
video on YouTube,
I posted the video from a couple days before and accidentally reposted it, luckily. So nobody got to see that OnlyFans content. You got to pay for that.
Ah, damn. Yeah, that's extra. only the fiance gets that one.
50,000. No, I wish I had 50,000. Oh, sorry. I'm just responding to the comment there. Yeah. But it has been a very good month for my channel as well, by the way. It's probably partly due to the Peter Beck interview and stuff like that. Hopefully we all had a bit of a bump.
Definitely. Yeah, it was really well done. I liked what we did. There were some minor things that we could have done better, but I think overall, with the speed at which we had to turn it around, I think we did phenomenally.
Yeah, it wasn't a lot of time to put that together.
It was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And did you guys see that there was 2 new Peter Beck interviews this week, and one of them was done by a random New Zealand guy, and he had the face to say in the interview, I've been watching a lot of your recent interviews, and you've been doing interviews with random guys on YouTube.
Yeah, I saw that. It's like, so we're random guys, eh? I mean, I guess we're pretty random.
I was telling my wife, you start with like completely unknown, and then one step on the scale is like one step up is like you're a random guy.
Well, we've gone from unknown to random now.
Yeah. And then you then eventually step up to that guy because people don't remember your name, but they remember your face.
Yeah.
And then it only steps up from there. So
I look forward to becoming that guy one day.
Yeah.
You're that guy to me, Dave. You're
okay,
that guy
well,
to me.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Anyways, on that interview, I just want to say that like they asked Peter Beck on Wild Wild Space, the documentary, and why there was no more footage, and he said that like we were not really cooperative, and like we don't need all this fanfare and fame. and I realized like they really don't need to be speaking with us like retail investors. So like my appreciation of like them doing the interviews with us just grew so much more.
Yeah, no, and I liked his answer saying he likes to do it because they know they have a good retail shareholder base and stuff like that. And personally, I feel like we know the business in much more depth than some of these other non-random interviews, just because they may have a bigger audience or be more well known. But yeah,
I mean, this guy had a channel of 6,000 subs. You know, like if you Matt has 12,000, I think you also have close to 6,000. No, so
me. I think I just hit 7 now.
Oh wow! Wow, that's
Davey's
really
catching
good.
up. It's gonna beat me soon.
Wow,
maybe.
So,
but they're also a company that does like investing, like an investing company in New Zealand. So a little bit more legitimate, maybe.
Yeah. Anyways, it gave me a tick when a random guy says he gave interviews to a random guy.
Yeah. No, I don't want to make fun of them because it was still a good interview, and if anyone's interested in a little bit more of Peter Beck's like personality and his upbringing and philosophy on things, I think it's worth checking out.
Cool. So I think we should start with the news this week. Let me just share my screen. There was not super much Rocket Lab news, but boy, in the space industry, there was a lot of happenings. A few hours before, yeah. I mean, we're gonna speak about the Starliner. It's a fun topic, but we start with Rocket Lab. So we're going to Mars. There is a date no earlier than October 13 for the New Glenn launch. I heard that the Mars has a 2-year window, and I heard that the window is ending basically in October. So if they miss this chance to launch with New Glenn, the next chance is in 2 years. So do you guys think we're going to make this? What do you think is the significance of this?
I hate to say it. I think they're going to miss the window. I mean, I think Blue Origin, from it looking in from the outside, has made a lot of improvements lately. Very impressed that they did that interview with Jeff Bezos and Tim Dodd, and it seems like the new CEO is making a lot of changes and improvements, but the timeline is so tight. They've never launched before. I don't know if you guys saw that article recently. Apparently they had some mishaps with a couple pieces of hardware that are supposed to be flight hardware for the first rocket. So that was all from one report. I don't know how reliable it was.
And that was like last week too.
Yeah.
So I was really surprised to see like this tweet by Blue Origin literally a week later to be like, we're on track. Let's go.
We'll see. I really hope they do, because I would love to see that thing fly, and it's a shame to, have Rocket Lab rush to get it all done and ready and do such a good job and then have it not fly. But
it's a lot of pluses and minuses. Yeah.
I'd put the under 50-50 personally.
But by the way, curious, in one of the interviews, Peter Beck said that what's brilliant about this Mars mission is not just how fast they did it, but also that the budget was in the tens of millions. And he was saying that it's super disruptive to the space industry because of how fast and cheap they could do these satellites. Did you guys pick up on those comments? And do you think that this might lead to more orders from other governments or companies that want to go interplanetary?
Maybe. That's been my hope for a while now, ever since they did Capstone and kind of demonstrated that capability. And, these interplanetary missions used to be like multiple $100 million, sometimes in the billions, I guess, for really big missions. But yeah, I think Rocket Lab's contract was maybe 60 million or something. And then Blue Origin got like 20 for launch.
20 million.
Yeah. They discounted this to the nines, really. I think they just wanted to get early contracts going on on New Glenn.
Wow.
So,
interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, so they'll lose money launching this payload, but I think they just.
I mean, what do you think the cost of a normal, or do you guys know the cost of a normal, non-discounted Blue Origin New Glenn launch?
I don't think they've disclosed it, but I feel like it's got to be like a good 100 million.
Yeah. My God, this was discounted.
At least
it's a big rocket. Yeah, I mean, it's.
Do you
bigger
remember?
than the
You don't remember
Falcon
the
9.
mask to Leo by any chance? Do you? I might have to double check that because it is quite large.
Wait, isn't it 30?
It's larger than Falcon 9.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's like 27,000, something like this. The number
45 tons apparently.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
that would
45.
be an expensive rocket.
Yeah, it's twice the size of Falcon 9 in terms of payload, right? Because Falcon 9, I think, can get 22,000, something like that. I think it's a plus and minus, right? Because if New Glenn doesn't load, and obviously that opens up, I don't know what the next contract they would have to be able to launch it, right? I mean, at the moment, all I really know that Blue Origin has in terms of contracts is this Escapade mission. So if they don't have the Escapade mission and that's delayed until, let's say, late 26, early 27, maybe, depending on what that 1.5, 2-year window looks like, then, what's the next thing? And is Neutron then kind of on the spotlight, right? I know it's completely different classes, right? The New Glenn is more of like a heavy launch vehicle compared to the Neutron medium launch, but I don't know how many rockets will need or how many folks will need 45 tons worth of lift. I think it's a really small market comparatively to where the medium launch rocket kind of sits. But I could be completely off base, right? I mean, maybe there is a larger market for 45 tons than I believe.
They do at least have a bunch of launches signed for Amazon's Kuiper, and
that's
obviously true. It was probably Daddy Jeff at the boardroom table, kind of like holding his checkbook and being like, "You guys will give this launch contract to Blue Origin." But so at least they have those in the backlog. Not too sure what else. I think there's a few other missions. I know they're it seems pretty likely they'll get into NSSL Lane 2 next year, I would think. But I don't know how long that would take for them to get assigned some launches.
But I think the 20 million, I didn't know the $20 million number there. So that's a pretty big discount.
I'm shocked on that too. Yeah. All right, we go over to the next one. This is some launch site updates from Rocket Lab. It's not much to see here. I don't know if you guys have any comments to this. It's pretty simple. They're still building Neutron.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of rebar there. Looks like they're still working hard. Sure, we'll see all that turn into pavement pretty soon.
Yeah. All right.
In the background, by the way, sorry, maybe if you can just go back for 1 second.
Yeah.
If you go in the left picture, if you open it up.
Yeah.
So very far in the background, I don't know if you can see towards the top left, there is that tent-like structure in that building they just put up. And they've cleared ground just to the left of that, which is going to be another building, it looks like.
I don't know if you can see
that was interesting to see.
Yeah. Cool. All right, so here's a really interesting one to me, at least, because I feel that sometimes Rocket Lab is dropping clues also when they have a new board member, and they were also dropping some clues there, I believe. So this one is recently Frank Calvelli, I probably am butchering the name, Assistant Secretary of the Air Force Space Acquisition and Integration, visited our HQ. During his visit, Mr. Calvelli delved into in-depth programmatic reviews of our work with the SDA and our innovative Neutron launch vehicle. Now, I love it when, Matt usually retweets something and he writes like probably nothing. So I felt like on this one, like you have a very high director of the SDA doing an in-depth review on Neutron. This to me smells like national security contracts incoming for Neutron. Did you guys what do you guys think about this visit? That is probably nothing. Yeah,
probably nothing. Yeah. Certainly a good sign. Would have been more exciting if this had happened before it was just announced that all those other companies won those new SDA. I think it was the Gamma layer I think L3 Harris won some, and several other companies won some. Rocket Lab wasn't. I don't know if they even bid on those, but yeah, we'll see if there's any more to come in the future. It's probably a good sign.
Yeah, it's one thing I definitely want to ask if in the future we have the opportunity to speak to Adam and Peter is like, what kind of satellites are you guys looking for? Because we could have been like getting our hopes up and been like, oh yeah, they're definitely going to get it, but they didn't even bid on the Gamma contracts, right? So, I mean, I'm trying to remember the ones that we did win, the 18 that we won earlier this year. That were those alpha or were those beta? I don't remember. But regardless, yeah, that's something I need a little bit more clarity to in the future, because otherwise you're just like waiting for something that if you just did a little bit more research, you knew would never happen.
Yeah, some other companies do give you a little bit more info on when they're bidding on things. Like when I follow Intuitive Machines, they're like, oh, we're bidding on this NASA contract, and they'll probably announce it in X months or whatever. But with Rocket Lab, you don't hear anything, until it's announced that they got it. So
yeah, I mean, the only other sorry, go ahead, Vince.
No, I was just going to ask if it can be some negative or disadvantage for them to say that they're bidding on a contract, like because I'm not sure that the companies know who's bidding. Like if you don't announce that you're bidding, I think it's like secret or anonym when you submit the bid. No.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. And somebody asked what's the difference between alpha and gamma. It's just the capability. Like some of them have tracking capability, some of them have communication capability. And I don't know specifically the difference between alpha and gamma, but if you look on the tranches, the alpha will have different capabilities than the gammas. So it might mean that one company might have a specific specialty for like what the main reason for the gamma satellites might be. So they might focus specifically on that.
Honestly, it's so complicated, and the way they lay it out, I don't think helps either, because you've got your tranches 0, 1, 2, 3, whatever, going to keep going. Then you have different layers. You have your transport layer, and then like missile tracking layers and stuff. And I think Rocket Lab got a transport layer contract. And then, you have your talking of alpha and gamma and all this stuff. And it's just like, oh my God, we got to simplify this somehow. But anyway.
No, you're not wrong. Well, I had a thought, but I forgot what it is. If I remember, I'll yeah.
No problem. We carry on. Here is another piece of news, which I believe has some clues. Rocket Lab has gotten a new board member, and this new board member has a very, very, very good resume or renommee or whatever you call it. He used to be the CFO of Lockheed Martin. And when I was, by the way, thank you so much for this super chat after 1984. And also the two guys before for the super chat, really appreciate it. So when I was doing research into this, what caught my eye most was that this guy has, what do you call it? Very deep expertise in handling financing here, including global treasury operations, foreign exchange, capital markets, rating agency relation, and capital planning. So this to me signals that Rocket Lab is looking at maybe raising some capital in the future, not now. That's the only way that I can understand it. I even looked at a video of a venture capitalist who explains why companies have different board members. And he said basically that, when you choose a board member, it's because they usually have connections or they have expertise that they can bring to your company, and sometimes both, right? Mm-hmm. And then I obviously started looking at, okay, what clues are they giving? And that's what stood out for me, that this guy is really good on investor relations, handling capital. But what did you guys think? Is this bullish, bearish? Should we buy put options because there's an imminent announcement and this stock is going to drop 20%?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say I That didn't occur to me at all. I kind of just thought, okay, well, it's the relationship with Lockheed here is going to be good, and maybe that'll help out. And obviously, lots of aerospace experience being CFO at a big company like that. But suppose that's possible. I would hope maybe they can get some more work with Lockheed, because they've given a ton of agreements out to like more 1-ton size launchers lately. But who knows if those are going to launch on time.
I think there is definitely a more of a reliance as we go into, I guess, maybe the second or third inning, I guess, depending on how you view this for Rocket Lab, around defense contracts. And Lockheed will be nice. So those connections, I think, will help. And I don't think Curtis is wrong. I mean, I hope that they more so lean on debt rather than dilution, because we're getting to a place now where we potentially will have profitability within the next 24 months. So my hope is the 550 million is a decent enough runway to kind of get us towards profitability, maybe pick up some. I still think people are anticipating big acquisitions. I've kind of leaned off the big acquisition of 100, 200 million. I think in more reality, I think what we're going to be doing is looking for opportunities to pick up companies that declare bankruptcy and bidding on their assets. So I think a couple companies like Velo3D and several others are actually going to go bankrupt within the next 12 months. And I wouldn't suspect, when you buy some of those things, if you buy them outright, you have to also carry the bad assets. I think Rocket Lab did a really good opportunity last year in early 2023 with Virgin Orbit. And I think that they learned a lot from that. So I think they're going to take that strategy and hopefully bid for assets on a case-by-case basis, the good things that they want, rather than acquiring the whole companies where you might be taking on bad things as well. So I think that there's that, but I really hope that they don't do a capital raise. I mean, to me, I just don't see, and if they do, maybe it's out of a sign of strength, right? Because not many others can do capital raises at the moment, as we've seen. Everybody really struggling with financing, even Relativity and Firefly. So I think, if they do a capital raise and somebody does offer the money, I think it'll be a show of strength. But to me, I think we're so, at the moment, so close. I don't necessarily think, unless there's some big sort of factory that you need for the constellation that's upcoming with the medium launch vehicle, I just don't really see anything at the moment that would cost hundreds of millions of dollars that they're going to do, other than that constellation. I think they have the cadence already that they need to be able to develop the electrons and hastes. And I think that, they'll get the working capital up front from those folks to be able to build those. So I don't think you'll need to come out of pocket. So I don't really see any major capital expenditures that would have them dipping into the 540 odd million that they have on the balance sheet. But could be wrong. And I've been wrong before. So,
I mean, I just really hope that it's a preemptive thing, because there's this VC saying that you need to raise money when you still have money. Like when you don't need to raise money is the best time to raise money, right? And I think that if they're doing this preemptively, meaning like Peter Beck suspects that maybe they will have a constellation opportunity that will be, like once Neutron is up and running and they're manufacturing their satellites, that it could really accelerate the growth of the company. Then maybe like this guy could smoothen up some banks, so that if Rocket Lab actually needs to do a capital raise, they're like prepped and it goes through, like they have options, they know like, yeah, if we would need 500 million, this is the conditions that we could get it with. That is my hope. I mean, logically, they don't need money currently.
Yeah. I mean, I said when they announced the last capital raise, because I don't like, I always like to try and make sure I don't cross the line into being a cheerleader and one of those stock people that no matter what a company says or does, that I'll always find a way to be supportive and say it's the best thing. So like I said, when they made that last raise, like I don't want to see another dilution event for a while, and only if it was like tied to, well, they're going to go after some sort of massive new opportunity. But certainly this soon, I would be very surprised by it. I do think they need some more payload capability. They talked about it previously. Curtis is mentioning that Mynaric company. I think they do the optical laser links for satellites. And I think if you just check out what they subcontracted out in their SDA deal of their own, you have a good idea of the kind of stuff they need, which is like, the antennas and all that kind of thing. So they have a deal with Celsium, and they subcontracted out to Redwire a few components and things like that.
Yeah. By the way, do you know why I saw in the Rocket Lab chat that there's a lot of people talking about this Mynaric being acquired, or like a lot of investors seem to suggest that it would be a good acquisition target for Rocket Lab. I don't know anything about this company, so if you guys could comment.
They're supplying those optical laser links where the satellites can communicate with each other for, I believe, not just Rocket Lab, but like a lot of the other SDA suppliers as well. And then they just reported, from what I understand, like absolutely horrible results with lots of delays, and it looks like they're in huge financial trouble. So it looked like it would make a lot of sense, but apparently there's some regulations in Germany that might make that a little more challenging. So something about foreign companies acquiring, German companies and rules around it and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot easier to get over some of these hurdles, regulatory hurdles, etc. It'd be like, imagine Rocket Lab trying to bid on the ESA, right? Like if say the ESA was in trouble, it's going to be very tough, because then you have a New Zealand company, even though they're based out of Long Beach, California, it's technically a U.S. company. You have a New Zealander with a U.S. company now taking over European assets. Like that's just kind of like room for disaster. Versus if, let's just say, you have the ability to kind of acquire IP or something like that after a company's declared bankruptcy and now it's being sold, you might still have regulatory hurdles associated with it. But as long as you're not buying, I guess, a European existing company and you're buying parts of a company, it might be slightly different. And it kind of goes into some of the things that you're always going to experience, I think, is generally speaking, when you're doing some of these contracts with other countries, generally they want to have their own people involved to make sure that, they have people and skin in the game for, recruiting those countries. So example, the ESA, they're launching out of South America. They, I'm sure, have to recruit local folks in that nation to be able to help with the launch cadence over there, right? So they're not going to be sending, I mean, they will send obviously some folks from Europe over there to be able to launch it, but they have to train up locals. And that's generally speaking what's always happening in a lot of these companies. So I assume if you were to have to acquire Mynaric or whomever is a European company, then you might have to have specific amount of German employees or something like that. Versus if you were to be scrapped up for parts, you might not necessarily have that regulatory constraint coming out of the EU. So that may or may not be a thing. I know in the oil industry, it's a really big thing. If we, UDOC, the company I work for, goes into a different country, sometimes we have to employ up to 50% local people, right? Otherwise they won't let us do it. And a lot of that is about like just making sure that money goes back into the community, right? You don't just take the resources from that company or that country and kind of leave it all to go to the government, which may or may not be distributed well throughout the economy in that particular country. So I assume it's very similar in the space industry and just most industries in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, keep in mind, Rocket Lab still has offices in other countries from some of these other, companies they bought as well. So it wouldn't be unheard of if they kept that German location open. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah. Okay. A very interesting food for thought. So we know that Rocket Lab raised the 300 million-ish to acquire a company. And both Peter Beck and Adam Spice said that, there is bad times coming. Financing is very hard to get. And there's going to be a lot of discounts, right? But now, they haven't announced anything for almost a year. And now the Fed starts lowering interest rates. ASTS is booming, which I think it seems to have given the space sector a boost. So do you do you guys think that Adam Spice and Peter might have missed the window here to buy cheap companies? Yeah, just food for thought.
Maybe, but I mean, yeah, that specific companies are obviously doing well. Others still struggle. I mean, we just saw Terran have to get saved from bankruptcy by getting taken over, and obviously Moneris is in big trouble still. So there could still be there are opportunities out there.
I think temporarily it might put a pause to cheap stocks and cheap companies, but it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? We still have 500 some million on the balance sheet, so a lot of these companies are still headed towards bankruptcy, even if their stock price might have taken a slight bump up in the last couple months. I mean, I'm not talking about Black Sky or Planet anymore. Those guys seem to be on stable footing. They're getting EBITDA positive, and I think they're going to continue to do well. But there's a lot of other companies out there that are just outspending the money that they have. So it might be a short-term bump up, but it doesn't mean they're not going to go bankrupt in the next 6 to 12 months. And I don't necessarily think that the guys had put a timeline on it. I think that they were just getting the opportunity while they thought it was prudent to do so. And I think that they just recognized the environment that was there, right? I mean, they raised that money less than 6 months ago. We've already seen several companies go belly up, and companies that we even thought were going to go belly up were bought out for pennies on the dollar. 98% losses, namely Astra. But that'll continue to persist, right? And I think that you're going to have more opportunities in the next 6 to 12 months than you have over the past 6 months.
Well, all right. So now, I think that was all the Rocket Lab news that I had. There is like a launch winter now. The next launch is feels like an eternity away on the 17th of September. So not much to say about that. But in the general space industry, there is a lot happening. I don't know if you guys saw this one. This is a German rocket RFA who was supposed to launch later this year. They were testing their first stage with 9 engines, I believe, or 7 engines for the first time. And something happened and the rocket blew up. Were you guys following this at all?
Yeah, someone on Twitter actually shared a LinkedIn post from I think it was one of the RFA owners or founders. And it just made me feel really bad for the guy, like talking about how his friends and family had invested into it, and like they weren't sleeping and doing all this work, and how devastated they were. And it just goes back to like how tough this all is. I've actually been reading a review copy of Eric Berger's new book, Reentry, about like early days Falcon 9 and Dragon and all that stuff. And it's just similar stuff, like listening to how it was on the inside, how crazy it is and what these people go through. It can be very rough on them.
Yeah.
I didn't follow per se, but I did see it. So I'm not really following that company. But I did see the blow up, unfortunately. So, if they have the capital, they'll come back better next time. And if not, then I'm sure their assets and their intellect will be continued on at a different company. But I'm not 100% certain about the company's financial standings or anything like that. But always sad. Hopefully nobody was hurt. I don't think I saw anybody getting hurt.
By the way, I think one of the main, I shouldn't say main, but I think I saw one of the people working on this very closely is a former Rocket Lab employee who had like a letter of recommendation from Peter Beck. So, I'm sure he's having a rough time as well.
Yeah. I mean, this video, I was not sure if I should play it or not. I was quite impressed. I don't know. I think this guy is their CEO, of how fast they, because basically this happened, when is the date? It's a few days ago. And today their CEO came out and said, like, this is what caused an anomaly, most likely. And, this is how we're handling it. And apparently they had So this was their first booster, and then they had like 3 in the works. So basically, they're just making the second one their first one. So they will be back. They're not going to fly this year, but they're not as delayed as I thought. And he has quite a good attitude about the whole thing. I don't know if this company is going to be successful. I would imagine that because this is a European rocket company, that they would get a lot of European contracts, which would, because I guess Europe would really like to have their own sovereign launch. So I think that they have a decent shot at becoming better than the Canadian company, because I cannot imagine that Canada would have enough sovereign launch. But yeah, do you guys? So you guys don't follow this company at all?
I mean, a little bit.
Mm.
Followed it a bit. You know, they've had a few failures before. The interesting thing is Firefly also announced a new launch pad they're going to eventually be launching out of in Europe. I think it might have been Sweden.
Yeah, it is.
And they're, from what I understand, pretty similar sizes. So they could potentially have to compete with Firefly if this does materialize. But, you know, I just wish them the best, and I'm sure they're going through a tough time.
Yeah. All right. So the next one is you actually tweeted something which made me think. So I don't buy into the idea that Rocket Lab and ASTS is some sort of a zero-sum game. Each one executing could potentially benefit the other, and they are not competitors. And I want to ask you to elaborate on this, because the way I was thinking is, you know, like Rocket Lab is like 1, a launch company, 2, a space systems company, and then, you know, like 1 + 2 is 3, like a space, like they have the potential to do a space infrastructure, right? And then in my mind, ASTS was only number 3, missing the part 1 and 2, and yet it's somehow valued way more than Rocket Lab is, and I have a hard time reconciling that in my head. Like, how can a company that is missing the keys to space be more valuable than the company with the keys to space?
I mean, I understand why you think that. If you look at AST more closely, it is interesting in just all these agreements they have in place with so many mobile network operators around the world now, especially the US. Something like 70% of US cell phones they could address. So the potential revenue is huge. You know, I think they still have a long way to go. Their first launch is supposed to be in September, I believe. It is, I think, like a binary play where it's either, you know, they'll get it running and do really well or not. But I guess the background on my post was that just so many people had taken to comparing the two companies and saying, look, if AST is worth this, Rocket Lab should not be worth this. And they're almost angry at the AST people for their gains. And I was just like, well, good for those guys. You know, they believed in the company. The two companies are currently not competing at all. And AST, I've said before, will definitely not want to keep launching with SpaceX. So if Neutron's online, I'm sure they'd love to launch with Neutron or someone else. And Rocket Lab hasn't said what their constellation will be. A lot of people will speculate, well, maybe it will compete with ASTs. But until we know whether that's the case or not, there's literally like nothing, no competition at all between these two. And if AST succeeds, they'll need more launches, they'll need more parts, whatever. It just grows the whole space industry.
All right, cool. Thanks. Okay. One other question, because I can't help but notice if you look at the last 2 weeks of ASTS and then you compare that with Rocket Lab last 2 weeks, it's a very, very similar graph. Do you guys think that the recent... It's kind of funny that if you listen to the episode last week, I think that this panel was sure that the stock price this week is not going to be in the 7s. We're going to have a huge pullback, or I mean, huge is relative, right? Like Rocket Lab is very volatile, so even small moves are quite big. But how much correlation do you think is currently between these two stocks, and why is that?
Between Rocket Lab and AST?
Yeah.
I would say only a little bit because of the hype that's kicked off around all space stocks, which started with AST. And I think, speculators, Wall Street bets people, and others just got really excited about other space stocks when they saw the returns this one had. And we saw Rocket Lab had a few good days, Lunar had a few good days. And other than that, I don't see why they should be super correlated.
I mean, other than being in the space industry, I think maybe people are starting to realize that the competitiveness is starting to pick up a little bit more, and that there's another competitor out there to Starlink. And I think that maybe that's what people are starting to observe, and they want to be a part of it, right? And they might have said, well, Rocket Lab might have some opportunity in there, and there's a few others that might have some opportunity in there. The space isn't dead, where I think a lot of people saw it as such, with what happened with Astra and its massive decline in market cap over the past several years, it going private. There's only bad news after bad news after bad news for the space industry, and now you start to get some great billion-dollar contracts that are potentially on the precipice of being signed at ASTS, and people are starting to look for, well, what other companies are out there, and I think you start to get a positive light back on the space industry. So do I necessarily think that brought Rocket Lab to, let's say, a premium valuation? No, we're still only at a $3.4 billion market cap at $7. So, I mean, is that premium? I wouldn't say so. But is it cheap either? No. So I guess it really just depends. But I think other than really just them being in the space industry together and people recognizing that space isn't completely dead and it can pay to be in space, and them doing a little bit of due diligence, being like, oh, we have other companies that actually aren't necessarily competing directly with each other, or I think everyone just assumed that SpaceX was the only winner in space, and now they're starting to recognize that there's others as well.
All right. So do you guys think if ASTA, because there's a lot of people calling for the ASTS bubble to burst, so do you think if ASTS would have a minus 30% next week because of how much it has run, like there's a chance that Rocket Lab can still be neutral or maybe go up a little bit? Or do you think that it would be a huge pullback in Rocket Lab also?
I think it'd be moderate, but I do think it would probably get dragged down a little bit. You know, all the space stocks kind of rose the past week or two, with the exception of a few. So, yeah.
But by the way, is this maybe the first time when the very reliable Rocket Lab indicator didn't work?
You know what? It is. What did it close at? It was like 696 or something, right?
Yeah.
It's below $7. So technically, she still came out ahead by 4 cents. So
okay.
We will have to wait and see on this. Oh yeah, it's right there, 696.
Yeah.
You know, you can never call the precise top. Yeah. But
so the people who are not familiar with the story, so Dave's wife, or like soon
is the Oracle.
Yeah, she seems to have an uncanny ability of buying Rocket Lab at the bottom and swing trading it and selling at the top. And is it like 2 times I have seen when she basically almost called the top and bought back very 3. Close to the I think this is her way of financing the wedding.
Well, if she's been financing the wedding, I need to know, because I thought I was paying a lot of those bills. So, but so she sold last week or whatever at $7 exactly, pretty much. She had like very solid gains on it, and I think she's just been playing this kind of range it's been in for quite a while, where the base is kind of like 4 or 380, and it'll occasionally jump to 5 or 6, and then she just sells and hopes it'll go back to 4. And so far it's worked out. I do want to say one day it will not, and it won't go back down, and then you won't have your shares. So, but until that day, I don't know how many times it'll do this.
Yeah.
I sold $10 cover calls for this week made out well. And then once I bought those back, I sold the $10 cover calls for next week. I think, it was next week. And I'm going to have those for a buyback at 5 cents. So fingers crossed. I just, my thought process is people are like, why don't you go out further? Right. To me, if the stock ends up moving, you have a lot more flexibility to move things out than if you have already booked out to 2025 or to 2026. Right. So people are always just like, you could be getting more premium. It's like, well, you kind of have to balance it. Right. I mean, you never know what the stock price is going to do. It could go on a short squeeze of all short squeezes and end up at $12, overnight. And I just don't want to be caught with my hand in the cookie jar, as TJ, our good friend, always says. So sometimes it's okay to be shorter. You also get a lot more time decay the shorter you are.
That's true.
Yeah. I don't know what your guys' experience is. It feels like anytime I sell options, it always goes against me like the first few days. I don't know why. There's like so much like things in the price of options. Like volatility can affect it. And if you, so I don't know why. I looked at it the other day and then I'm like, I don't think I've almost ever sold an option and then it just went good. Like,
Well, you need that time. You got to give the time decay time.
Exactly.
But,
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, you never, time a move perfectly, but as long as it.
You know what's crazy is I sold $8 call options. I think this is like the universe telling me to not sell call options, but I didn't dare to sell call options on my Rocket Lab position for a whole year because I was afraid that we were going to get a monster rally, and I'm going to be like the options are going to be in the money, and then I will have a very hard time rolling them. So I waited a whole year, and then I was like, okay, fine. I will sell call options now. When did I sell the call options? It was just before this monster rally. So what's crazy is it says that I'm down like 100,000 on the call options, but they're out of the money, right? So it's like when I look at my portfolio, Dave, you were asking like, how is your portfolio like on Twitter, this year?
Yeah.
And it's so weird because like it's very good, but it's not thinking with the 100,000 on the call options because that's how much this rally went against me, but the options are still out of the money. I don't know, maybe this is very advanced for a part of the audience, but I'm quite comfortable with my it's a January $8 call options.
You sold January $8 call options from Rocket Lab on Rocket Lab?
Right after the earnings, like when the earnings bump happened, and then we got this monster rally.
There were some juicy premiums out there. Like I was chatting with a few guys on the Discord channel. One guy was telling me he sold call options on a Wednesday for that Friday, and it was at like a $12 strike when the price was like 7 or something. This is the Wall Street Bets people coming in, I guess. And he still got like, over 10 cents a share or something crazy. And for 3 days.
That's crazy. That is insane.
He's like, I sold this to some guy on Wall Street Bets. Like there wasn't, it was wild.
And it's also one of those where it's like, if the stock goes to 12 and they take your stocks, you're like, okay, take them. Like, I'm happy, like.
You sold it for $12. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another funny story, I guess. I don't even know if I should tell this. I guess I will. It's about Intuitive Machines, Lunar. I don't know if you guys are as familiar with them.
Mm-hmm. A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. So I've been watching them more closely lately because they've got some interesting catalysts coming up, including this contract announcement that should be imminent from NASA for Near Space Network, I think it's called NSN or something like that, for communications with the further objects out that they're expecting to win. But I thought, you know what? Screw it. For once, I'm going to be one of those guys who buys like out of the money call options only 1 month until expiry date, because I think these guys have a couple catalysts, and I saw that Intuitive Machines was starting to climb Wall Street Bets a little bit. So I made this decision at around the 4 o'clock after hours, but I couldn't place the trade after hours. So I guess Do you guys know? Are you
I saw
allowed?
this tweet. I saw this
Yeah,
tweet.
yeah. Are you allowed to place options trades after and have
I
it go
cannot.
through
I
after
cannot.
hours, Matt?
I cannot. No.
No, not unless it's a private. I don't think public will let you.
'Cause I know you can
Unlike,
trade the stock after hours.
yeah.
So anyway, I submitted my order for the going rate of the option as of 4 p.m. that night, and I figured it would probably just go through in the morning. In the morning, Wall Street Bets took the stock wild, and by the end of the day, I would have had a 5x on that option if it went through. So I would have, and I put $3,000 worth order in, so it would have gone from 3,000 to 15. Obviously, it never happened, but
the wedding,
that would have been a lot of the wedding covered. But you know, I don't know. These things happen, I guess. It was more of a gamble than anything else.
Yeah, it's a nice story. All right, so I think we go to the last news of the week, which just broke a few hours before we started, and that is that the Starliner is coming home without astronauts, uncrewed, and the SpaceX Dragon capsule is going to be called in to save the 2 Boeing astronauts from the ISS. What do you guys think? This is a huge black eye to Boeing, but yeah, I'm curious.
I mean, devastating for Boeing. I don't think there's any way anymore for them to make money on the Starliner with the ISS, because they have a contract for, I believe, 6 trips to and from. And, you know, there's going to be another delay when they figure all this stuff out and work on these thruster issues. Who knows if the next flight will even be another test flight or the first actual crew flight. I didn't see the whole press conference, so I need to double check that. But
what I saw is that they're going to deliver cargo. Like, that's the plan for a few more flights.
Oh, okay. Anyway, so the ISS is deorbiting supposedly 2030. There's no way that they will recoup their losses on this with the amount of flights they have on the books. So with a new management coming in, seems like that, you know, it wouldn't be crazy for them to think about axing it. We'll see.
Matt, what are your thoughts on this?
I don't know. Shame that unfortunately those astronauts have to be up there without their families for so long. That's all I'll say. But yeah, hopefully it can speed it up. Is it really really next February? That's tough. That's really tough.
I think it was originally supposed to be something like 8 days.
Yep.
Yeah. That is pretty crazy. Yeah, I had a thought. I just having a Joe Biden moment here.
Yeah. There was no one from Boeing at the press conference either. It was all NASA people.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
And the NASA director said that he spoke to the new Boeing CEO, and he was given assurances that Boeing wants to continue with the Starliner program. So
I feel like they always say stuff like that up until the moment they cancel something.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
could be.
So I know what I wanted to say. So in one of the Peter Beck interviews, they asked him also about the Starliner situation, and he's so sharp, this guy. He was like, yeah, this is the prime example of why you need 2 of everything, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, immediately he made it, like, without invalidating Boeing, he made it into like, this is why Neutron is needed, you know. I think that this is in some way really good for Rocket Lab, and because, you know, it's true what Peter Beck said, that this solidifies that you need 2 different, independent of each other systems for, you know, critical capabilities that the government needs, and launch is one of those.
Yeah, I just think at the moment, I mean, I was the one that kind of spurred that question in the interview, and just doesn't seem like the money's there, right? Like, it seems like a lot of risk for very little reward. There doesn't seem to be that much cadence at the moment. Now, maybe once you have some more cadence going into Gateway and having having a International Space Station kind of circulating the moon and orbiting the moon, maybe there's going to be a little bit more because there's going to be a lot more activity. But yeah, it just seems like at the moment there's just not enough.
We need those commercial stations, the orbital reefs, axioms, whatever. There's several potential ones being looked at, but until those are a reality, I don't think the investment, you can justify it.
Yeah, I mean, if NASA pays for it, maybe, but yeah.
Yeah.
But how can they, it wouldn't be for ISS though, with like,
yeah,
five.
That short of, short of a timeline. Yeah.
You guys know what I've been thinking about lately is, we always bag on the cost plus contracts because that's the old way of doing space. And that was responsible for, jacking up the prices. But what if, let's say, Rocket Lab would give a bid on the capsule, right? And they say, okay, NASA, give us $3 billion and we deliver the human rated capsule, fixed price, But what if it costs more than $3 billion to Rocket Lab? Then it's like a huge risk that they didn't need to take on. And there's no way of recoup because there's no other market behind, right? So if they mess up, like there's no other way to recoup the money. I was actually thinking about this. I was thinking about this because of the lunar companies and the lunar rover contracts, that a lot of those companies are very unproven. And they're bidding for these contracts, and I don't know how capital strong they are. And I'm like, if they miss and it's like 1 or 2 billion more, then what?
I think it really depends on how the contract is written. I deal in pretty big projects myself, and a lot of the times that overruns get sent back to the person who's paying for it, right? So generally speaking, you don't go to a prime contractor and say, this is $515 million. It costs 700. You're gonna have to eat that $200 million. At least in my experience, that's generally not how it works. I mean, it's up to the person that's asking for the contract to ensure that you get and have agreed upon the quality and the capability of the organization. That's why there's so many different contracts, so many different bids, so much of all those things that happen. I could be very wrong. Maybe NASA does give out contracts like that where they just say, we're giving $1 billion and that's it. And any cost overruns you have to eat. But in my experience, this is not generally how the industry works.
All right, Dave, I think I cut you off a little bit there. I don't know if you...
I don't even remember what I was saying. But yeah, I can tell you in terms of this Starliner contract, Boeing has had to eat... which is like different than how they used to do things. They have had to eat significant losses.
Yeah, I think I heard something like 2 billion in losses for this one, for Boeing.
I'd have to double check the number.
Yeah. All right, so very important question. Who's planning to attend the Neutron launch? Because apparently Christopher Bell is booking in the Hilton hotel for us. I very much want to go. Disclaimer, I have 4 kids and a full-time job, and it's this Neutron launch is something that is, it's not like you can plan for it a year ahead. It's I imagine it's going to be announced like 2 weeks before, and there's very likely there's going to be delays and yeah. But I count me in. Are you guys also planning?
I really hope to attend, and I've been planning that I would go for Neutron for my first ever rocket launch. But I'm also just about to get married, and then we're talking maybe a year from now. Like, who knows?
Kid on
this
the
is
way?
very speculative.
A baby,
Dave.
If
I couldn't like leave a 9-month pregnant wife or something to go to a Neutron launch, like it just wouldn't. I don't know. Yeah.
I'll drink for you, Dave.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll have to push off having kids for Neutron.
We will have you like in Modern Family, we will have like a little robot with like a pin with an iPad on it, and then you will be like FaceTiming with us on the robot.
We'll see what happens. Who knows?
All right. But let us know in the chat who is coming so that Christopher can book the Hilton Inn for us. Matt, I guess we can count you in.
Yeah, I'm pretty single and
no kids coming.
No kids coming that I know of,
that
and I'm pretty certain I would find out. So yeah, luckily for me, I'm pretty flexible.
Cool. Well, I think this was an amazing episode. I had fun. Hopefully next week when we're here, the Dave is healthy and the stock price is still over 7.
There you go.
And but you're not going to be here because you're getting married. That's right.
Correct.
So,
I'll be gone for a few weeks afterwards too. So yeah you guys.
Probably... I won't be here either. I'll be in Cancun getting drunk. So
nice.
Celebrating Dave's wedding. Yeah.
All right. It might be a solo episode if Scotto cannot come. But thank you guys so much for being here this week. And see you guys when we see you.
Thanks for the invite. Getting closer and closer to 52. So it should be fun.
Yeah. All right. Ciao.
See you guys.